You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday 30th of April 2014. Charlene kissed me goodbye, I never saw her again. Kudos to Coventry Telegraph. Ahmed, secret snaps of the dirty doctor. Fears man dressed like terrorist was bomber at Derbyshire Remembrance Day service. Law could force Spanish kids to do housework. Italy, 800,000 migrants about to depart for Europe. Saudi Arabia slams Norway on human rights. As Pakistani Catholics pray against sexual violence against children, more rapes reported in the Punjab. Nigeria, abducted girls moved abroad. Thought for the day, flaming from Penge. And finally, the technical age and its price. UK News. Charlene kissed me goodbye, I never saw her again. Kudos to Coventry Telegraph. Charlene Downs went missing in 2003. A mum is hoping to finally see justice done more than 10 years after her teenage daughter was murdered. Charlene Downs, aged 14, was last seen by her mum Karen a decade ago. Karen, 48, spent much of her life in Coventry and Charlene was born there. The family moved to Blackpool before Charlene vanished in November 2003. Police initially believed she'd run away from home, but months later detectives told her family they were 99.9% certain she'd been murdered. Detectives are now looking again at the unsolved case. Karen says she's delighted Lancashire police are putting resources into bringing Charlene's killer to justice. World at 8. For once an article in the news media concerning Charlene and treating Karen with respect a grieving mother deserves. Ahmed, secret snaps of the dirty doctor. A doctor who turned part of a hospital ward into his own secret pornography studio has been thrown out of the profession. Dr Sumail Ahmed, 28, took over 100 snaps of women while he carried out intimate examinations at Torbay Hospital, Devon. The trainee surgeons sectioned off their beds from the rest of the ward and touched his victims as he removed their clothing to get a better view of their bodies for his camera. During the intimate checks he told victims who were in their 20s he was using his mobile phone to time their breathing or heart rate. He also installed a secret camera in a house owned by his family to film students using the toilet. Ahmed was suspended by Torbay Hospital after 2 women complained about their examinations, sparking a probe into his conduct. A police investigation found 110 images of patients uploaded to his home personal computer, along with footage from a secret camera installed in a property belonging to his family. He initially denied any wrongdoing, claiming he had taken pictures for his medical portfolio. But Ahmed of St Coed Road, Cardiff, admitted 11 counts of voyeurism and 2 counts of sexual assault by touching when he appeared at Exeter Crown Court. He was jailed for 18 months last October, later increased to 30 months after the Court of Appeal found the sentence was unduly lenient. The panel has therefore determined that erasure is the most appropriate action. Dr Ahmed, who is still serving his prison sentence, will be struck off in 28 days, subject to appeal, although the panel imposed an immediate order of suspension. World at 8. What was that about a foreign culture? What culture? What a perv! No doubt a pillar of the Islamic community. Fears man dressed like a terrorist was bomber at Derbyshire Remembrance Day service. Mohammed Dar walked into a Derbyshire church on Remembrance Sunday and began shouting, "Turn to Allah," a court heard. Churchgoers were left terrified after believing a 52-year-old man who walked into their church dressed like a terrorist on Remembrance Sunday might be armed with a bomb. Mohammed Dar covered his face with a scarf and his head with a bandana that had the words "God is great" in Arabic written on it when he entered the New Life Church in Alfreton. Within minutes he was shouting how the congregation should turn to Allah and that Islam sent boys aged 10 to war. North East and Dales Magistrates Court heard how minutes before he walked into the church he had disrupted a Remembrance Day parade at the Cenotaph in Alfreton. Magistrates found Dar guilty of 2 counts using threatening and abusive words or behaviour. Giving evidence, Dar said he had lived in Alfreton for 11 years and he did not know there was a Remembrance Day parade happening until that morning when he drove to Hall Street. In a statement read out in court, Sergeant Jonathan Barnhill of Derbyshire Police said he had been asked by Dar to visit his house on October the 18th 2 weeks before the incident. He said, "When I was there, Mr Dar said he views suicide bombers as the highest form of people. He also informed me that he did a lot of research into terrorism. I found Mr Dar very disturbing." Dar will be sentenced at a future date pending a report. World at 8. If Dar had been a white Christian BNP member, his house would have been turned over, his personal possessions and clothes taken, and he would have been roughed up and imprisoned immediately. One law for them and one law for us. European news. Law could force Spanish kids to do housework. Spanish parents and school teachers may soon have a new weapon in the battle against disobedient children after ministers approved a new draft child protection bill recently. If the law is passed, children under 18 in Spain will be legally obliged to do household chores in accordance with their age and regardless of their gender. They will also have to participate in family life and respect their parents and siblings, Spain's ABC newspaper reported. There are obligations for minors on the school front too. Children would have to respect school rules and study as required. More generally, these children will have to maintain a positive attitude about learning. At the same time, will also have to respect their teachers and other staff at education centres as well as their fellow students. The draft law doesn't set out penalties for children who fail to fulfil these requirements, but marks a new shift in the legislation with its focus on the responsibilities of children. Other key elements of the proposed bill include the establishment of a list of known paedophiles who could be banned from working with children. Schools and companies hiring staff to work with children will also have to ask applicants to provide a copy of their criminal record. The legislation would also require people working with children to report possible crimes against children, and failure to do so will be considered of a crime of omission. World at 8. This is needed over here, in fact, more than needed. Italy. 800,000 migrants about to depart for Europe. At least 800,000 migrants are about to depart the North African coast for Europe, with Italy's reception system already at the point of collapse, officials in Rome said Tuesday. "We no longer have a place to take them, and locals are overwhelmed by the constant arrival of foreigners," Border Police Chief Giovanni Pinto told a joint meeting of the Foreign and Defence Committees in the Senate. Italy is appealing for international help. During a cabinet meeting on the Mare Nostrum sea patrol and rescue mission in the Mediterranean on Monday, Premier Matteo Renzi vowed to request more commitment from the European Union and United Nations on tackling undocumented immigration. Mare Nostrum was set up to prevent deaths at sea following 2 migrant ship disasters in October 2013, in which around 400 people died. According to Interior Minister Angelino Alfano, more than 20,500 migrants have already landed on Italy's coast to date this year, an enormous increase over the 2,500 reported during the same period in 2013. Speaking before a committee on the country's borders earlier this month, Alfano stressed that the number of incoming migrants was on pace to reach the record levels of 2011, when more than 62,000 people entered. Thousands more have arrived since he spoke earlier this month, heightening the concerns about Italy's ability to cope. Opponents of Mare Nostrum have argued the programme only encourages migrants to risk their lives and cross the Mediterranean, often in rickety, overcrowded boats, which tends to increase in spring and summer months as sea conditions improve. World at 8. The UN and NATO are thrilled to use these people as a fifth column into Europe and the UK. Only they do it under the banner of poor desperate people forced to flee, we all need to help crap. No one forces them onto the boats, and in days before benefits and stupid governments, these are the same people who would stay and fight in their own countries to make things better, not like rats leaving a sinking ship. We can all do that, only in the case of white Christians, where do you go and who would pay for you and where do you hide? Answer on a postage stamp, please. Saudi Arabia slams Norway on human rights. Norway's human rights record came in for a sharp criticism during a UN hearing on Monday, with Saudi Arabia and Russia weighing in to highlight the country's shortcomings. Saudi Arabia and other Islamic countries accused Norway of doing too little to protect its Muslim minority, with Saudi Arabia calling for all criticism of religions or their prophets to be made illegal. Meanwhile, Russia accused the country of allowing extremist groups to operate freely and of moving too quickly to separate children from their parents. Norwegian Foreign Minister Borg Brende was in Geneva on Monday to respond to criticism from no fewer than 91 other countries during a session of the United Nations Universal Periodic Review, under which UN members take turns to go under scrutiny. Before Monday's hearing, Brende conceded to Norway's NTB Newswire that many of the countries collected together to criticise Norway themselves hardly had spotless human rights records. It's paradox that countries which do not support fundamental human rights have influence on the Council, but that is the United Nations, he said. World at 8. WTF. The Norwegians may be tougher than the other Scandinavians, but they sure as hell treat their Muslim minorities much better than any bleeding Islamic country treats its non-Muslim minorities. On the other hand, deport all the European Muslims to Saudi and let them cope with them. World news. As Pakistani Catholics pray against sexual violence against children, more rapes reported in the Punjab. Torchlight processions and prayers are held for Sarah, who is in hospital in critical condition. In the past few days, 2 more cases have been reported. A 6-year-old girl sexually assaulted in Faisalabad and a 9-year-old girl raped and killed in Jang district. A recent study confirms the trend but acknowledges that only a few cases are reported. Sexual violence against girls continues in the Punjab province, with perpetrators still free amidst government silence and police inaction. In view of the situation, the Catholic Church of Pakistan yesterday organised torchlight processions and prayers in many Pakistani churches to demand justice for the innocent victims of sexual violence. At the end of Sunday Mass, meditations and prayers were performed for the young victims, especially for the speedy recovery of Sarah, a gang rape victim, and the release of Salwa Masih and Asia Bibi, who were sentenced to death for blasphemy. Sarah is not alone. In the past week, 2 other underage girls were raped in the Punjab, a 9-year-old girl raped and then murdered in Jang district, and a 6-year-old girl raped and left in a critical condition in Faisalabad. World at 8. We in Europe have been warned, but will we listen? Iraq hits jihadist convoy in Syria. Iraqi military helicopters have destroyed a convoy of fuel tankers inside Syrian territory, Baghdad says. The convoy was heading towards the border and was due to supply jihadi militants in Iraq's Anbar province, according to the Interior Ministry. It's believed to be the first time Iraq has said it carried out an attack inside Syria. Interior Ministry's Brigadier General Said Mann said 8 lorries were hit in the raid near al-Bukamal and 8 people had been killed. World at 8. Good, the more the merrier. Nigeria. Abducted girls moved abroad. Most of the 234 Borno schoolgirls in Boko Haram captivity had been ferried abroad to Chad and Cameroon after they were married off to sect members for 2,000 naira each, £10, an elder told Nigeria's Daily Trust. The 2,000 naira was paid as bride price on each of the girls to the specific Boko Haram members who took them from their school and who had assumed ownership of the students. The female students were taken from their hostels at Government Girls Secondary School, Chibok, on the night of April the 14th. About 40 had escaped in the days after the incident, but parents and school authorities said at least 234 of them were yet to be found. Thought for the day. Flaming from Penge. Like the late great Tony Hancock, everyone has their angry from Penge persona who writes in, as in the old days, or emails now, and like that person I'm taking up the cudgels as I'm simply flamingly angry over just so much that I'm having to put some thoughts aside for after the EU elections. But suffice to say I become so sick and tired of the television as a media with certain programmes which have been surrendered to the school of diversity and multiculturalism that even I, who have stuck by Coro and EastEnders for years, find myself fast forwarding the recordings of same when specific scenes are shown. Now Coro is directed by a Menage Hooder or something along those lines, and clearly most of the new faces are either passing for white or not, but the health club run mainly by Asians is the only new business in that area and is abundantly stocked, as one might say. But with the now usual scenario of white woman fancying the pants of an Asian liberally speckled with another fancying the pants of a black person and mixed with the usual mixed race child, there is somewhere another PPP, public pulling power scenario of a black lesbian fancying or not fancying something or other. I have given up. It would seem around Coro the bettable girls go round in ever decreasing circles, betting everything, and I mean everything, that comes their way, excuse the pun. EastEnders is now redolent with grief over Lucy, who I couldn't stand in the first place, as she got thinner and thinner and her acting got worse, but now stands in death as a second-rate Princess Di as regards grief. I say good riddance to whoever bumped her off. Of course we have Muslims giving out advice on how to handle men and marriage Islamic style, the new family owning the pub have a queer son of course who can't seem to make up his mind, and I just fast forward most of this show nowadays. Now the reason I do so is not as one would think, just because I don't like to see the increase in ethnic actors, but because TV soaps are being used as a tool to get the Brits used to the idea that we are no longer a white Christian country. We are in fact a multicoloured, unintegrated, non-Christian, multi-sexed, Marxist hellhole. And this was brought to the fore in the wonderful news item on racism being sent away by footballers eating bananas online. Where else but in England could you find this making the news? Certainly not in the old days, when so-called racism was just a person being patriotic, and indeed we had no need of this particular word until earlier this last century, as we were like other countries in the world, mainly occupied by our own people, and they were quite varied enough for us. The footballers and sports anti-racist brigade is a laugh, and if you look closely and think, these people do not have to live within any distance of our heavily enriched cities and suburbs. They are the new rich and deposit their black behinds firmly behind gated communities that keep anyone who is worth under a certain level financially firmly out, and that goes for any colour, so who is more racist? A keen football fan who lives next door to all the wrong things that ethnics bring to our country and doesn't like the fact that the British teams are almost all heavily enriched, or the mega rich black footballer who lives the high life and gets away with in some cases literally anything. You tell me. When all these comedians, actors, sportsmen and sportswomen, authors, media moguls, kings of the boardrooms, society mega rich and non-society mega rich live within the communities they continually exhort and jump on bandwagons publicity wise, then I will listen to them, but not before. Our country is changing beyond recognition, and this change has speeded up during the last few years when the first wave of immigrants gave birth, and it is the sheer numbers of ethnics from all over the world that is making our country unlivable for us and our children. And this is why I resent the media so much, especially television. It was recognised as the greatest force of evil many years ago, and it has fulfilled its big brother heritage. We have at least 3 generations of our young who simply either do not care about themselves or their future, or have been so propagandised that they don't want children or families themselves and don't care if they work or even succeed in getting out of bed that day. This has all been written by the powers that be, who care nothing for the individual or even the people when it comes to our individuals and our people or tribes. Our country is a different matter. That is worth something to somebody, and already we are busy selling everything off that could help Britain become great again. What are these things? Self-sufficiency, industrialisation, farming, fishing, arable land not being ruined by the EU and being made into floodplains, good land not being built on for ethnics, no new high-speed trains for troop movements, apprenticeships and training for our youth, voluntary national service being introduced for all young men over 18 for 2 years, regardless of creed or culture, halal and kosher killing made illegal, education to be directed away from immigrants and English to be the main language, English jobs for English people, and stop strip mining our corporations and selling them out to foreign interests. All these things have been stopped, and it is immigration and the EU that have brought this new Britain into being, and I don't like it one bit. I am, after all, flaming from Penge. During the early days of the National Front in the 60s, despite living up near Birmingham where the rot started, I couldn't understand the word racist because we didn't hear it. People in general, even in areas that are now no-go areas, saw the first stragglers oiling their way around the main city and we took no notice. No one, only the National Front, saw that things were going to get worse, but they were dismissed, as are to some extent the BNP today. The only difference being that today you would have to be deaf, blind and dumb not to see the terrible effect that massive immigration has had on this country during the last 50 years. It would not be fair to say that the standards in our inner city schools have dropped through the floor solely due to the fact that in many of these schools the entire classes are made up of ethnic children, but it would be true. As would the lowering of discipline with the race card and the human rights brigades, and the religious and cultural leanings of wearing or carrying weapons into a school, which is a foreign-induced fashion, as we are not in the United States where guns are readily available and has a gun culture in the past. These are all cultural norms for some, but not for the English. It'll be interesting to know the name of the killer of the teacher Anne Maguire, as it is quite legal to name a minor who has been charged with the crime of murder. This is usually withheld in this country now for various reasons, not to offend an ethnic community or to avoid revenge killings. Mind you, in the case of the latter, if there were no revenge killings after Lee Rigby, I doubt if anyone is capable of them anymore in this almost disabled population, either by intent or intensive propaganda. We are encouraged by the powerful Zionist-run media to turn the other cheek, namely do what was purported in Germany and throughout Europe under the Third Reich, and all calmly accept and submit to the future as it will be. Not on my watch, mateys. When you have quasi-stupids like Boris the Loris saying that all the critics of the terrible HS2 are worried over house prices and that we should act like the French and wave chequebooks at them, there is one thing that escapes everyone. France and other countries who have this sort of high-speed track have more room in those countries to lay it. To the idiots in power, this is a small island and we are already overrun with foreigners, foreign-owned businesses, huge amounts of imports which we don't really need, and are running out of land at a mega rate. You cannot put a litre into a pint pot, no matter how much you throw at it. Get real, get British and stop whinging. And to finish off my flaming diatribe, Cyril Smith has taken over as the fall guy for the Rochdale area. Now, I'm not denigrating the nasty acts he committed, but you have to understand that Smith's buggery and whatever was hushed up for years, just as the mainly Muslim grooming gangs had been ignored for years. The media is now full of Cyril and Max taking innocents, etc., but not a mention of what is still going on up in Rochdale. Do the powers that be care or think it's gone away? Don't they understand it is a cultural and religious way of life for many in the Muslim communities, and we will never be rid of it until we're rid of the people that are committing the crimes? What has bypassed common sense in this country is that when you allow, pay for, encourage and supposedly need foreigners in your country, they bring their culture, religion, morals, health issues and businesses with them. And they also bring our future in the shape of breeding more of them and outbreeding us. It isn't racist to be worried or aware, it is common sense and patriotism. And anyone who says different is just plain stupid. Look around, listen and watch and realise you might never see this country as it is now or was ever again. Not all progress is good and not all Luddites are bad. Slightly less flaming from Penge. By the way, where is Penge? Not near Southall by any chance. And finally, the new technical age and its price. We all know that computers are wonderful, but they are not human, and they are only as good as the people who operate them. This is a salutary tale of a new password, and please do excuse my language. Please enter your new password. Cabbage. Sorry, the password must be more than 8 characters. Boiled cabbage. Sorry, the password must contain 1 numeric character. 1 boiled cabbage. Sorry, the password cannot have blank spaces. 50 bloody boiled cabbages. Sorry, the password must contain at least 1 uppercase character. 50 bloody boiled cabbages. Sorry, the password cannot use more than 1 uppercase character consecutively. 50 bloody boiled cabbages shoved up your arse if you don't give me access now. Sorry, the password cannot contain punctuation. Really pissed off, 50 bloody boiled cabbages shoved up your arse if you don't give me access now. Sorry, that password is already in use. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar and I wish you all a very good night. As she's delighted Lancashire police are putting resources into bringing Charlene's killer to justice. World at 8. For once an article in the news media concerning Charlene and treating Karen with the respect a grieving mother deserves. Ahmed, secret snaps of the dirty doctor. A doctor who turned part of a hospital ward into his own secret pornography studio has been thrown out of the profession. Dr Sumail Ahmed, 28, took over 100 snaps of women while he carried out intimate examinations at Torbay Hospital, Devon. The trainee surgeons sectioned off their beds from the rest of the ward and touched his victims as he removed their clothing to get a better view of their bodies for his camera. During the intimate checks he told victims who were in their 20s he was using his mobile phone to time their breathing or heart rate. He also installed a secret camera in a house owned by his family to film students using the toilet. Ahmed was suspended by Torbay Hospital after 2 women complained about their examinations, sparking a probe into his conduct. A police investigation found 110 images of patients uploaded to his home personal computer, along with footage from a secret camera installed in a property belonging to his family. He initially denied any wrongdoing, kudos to Coventry Telegraph. Charlene Downs went missing in 2003. A mum is hoping to finally see justice done more than 10 years after her teenage daughter was murdered. Charlene Downs, aged 14, was last seen by her mum Karen a decade ago. Karen, 48, spent much of her life in Coventry and Charlene was born there. The family moved to Blackpool before Charlene vanished in November 2003. Police initially believed she'd run away from home, but months later detectives told her family they were 99.9% certain she'd been murdered. Detectives are now looking again at the unsolved case. Karen says like terrorist was bomber at Derbyshire Remembrance Day service. Law could force Spanish kids to do housework. Italy, 800,000 migrants about to depart for Europe. Saudi Arabia slams Norway on human rights. As Pakistani Catholics pray against sexual violence against children, more rapes reported in the Punjab. Nigeria, abducted girls moved abroad. Thought for the day, flaming from Penge. And finally, the technical age and its price. UK News. Charlene kissed me goodbye, I never saw her again.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number 1 in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday 30th of April 2014. Charlene kissed me goodbye, I never saw her again. Kudos to Coventry Telegraph. Ahmed, secret snaps of the dirty doctor. Fears man dressed